Mario Party 2 is the most influential video game in my life. It wasn't my introduction to video games, but it was the game that launched me into the gaming stratosphere, and it's because of this game that I think my childhood was one of the best you could ever ask for. I first came into contact with Mario Party 2 at the grocery store when my parents let my sister and I rent a game for our brand new used Nintendo 64. I had no idea what game to pick looking at all the boxes, but my sister seemed to recognize a character on one game since I remember she said, "Oh look, they have Mario," when we passed the games that started with M, and the game she picked up after making that comment featured a cowboy on it, labeled Mario Party 2, and that was the game she rented. If you're wondering what game I chose, it wound up being Kirby 64. The game starts with a cutscene taking place on a stage, featuring the Mario heroes as they bicker about who will get to name a new world they created. This is probably the most odd introduction to a Mario Party, but it stands out because of it. Like, what do they mean by world? A planet? A universe? Super Mario World? Or a theme park, I guess. The theme of this game is that the boards take place in Sky Disney World or something, and this plays one of the attractions. And like I said, the characters are arguing about who gets to name it when Bowser suddenly shows up and starts melting guardrails, so the gang decides that whoever defeats Bowser can name the land like the narcissists they are. Spoiler alert, they all beat Bowser together. So for those of you living under a rock, Mario Party is a collection of board games. Oh, I'm sorry, adventure maps, that up to 4 people can play. Now, I've always been a big fan of board games because I'd play a bunch with my sister and cousins, but what set Mario Party apart from Monopoly and Trouble was that you get to play a minigame after everybody's had their turn, and let me tell you, I was addicted to playing minigames. They were little challenges that lasted a minute, like racing on a penguin bobsled or slamming a totem pole into the ground with your butt, and because they were so simple and short, I would just play them over and over again. My favorite minigame of all time, as well as the first one I ever played, was Platform Peril, and I couldn't have asked for a better minigame to begin my Mario Party career with. All you have to do is jump from platform to platform, but my uncoordinated 5-year-old body couldn't even jump across the first platform, and after failing so quick, I had to sit there and watch the computer players beat the minigame so easily. It made me determined to get to the end, to win. So when I found out how to replay minigames, I went back to Platform Peril and played it over and over again. Failing every single time, but getting just a bit closer and a bit better with each attempt. I spent hours and days playing Platform Peril just so I could beat it, and finally, I made it to the end. And that was one of my biggest achievements as a gamer. So to say that I don't have some sort of connection with Mario Party 2 would be a lie, but there's much more to it than one minigame about timing jumps. But before I go on gushing about all the minigames I love, let's go back to the core of Mario Party, which are the game boards. I said earlier that I'd play board games with my sister and cousins quite a bit, and those memories I have with them really drive who I am and how I thought the future would be. For years, my summer breaks between school years would be spent at my grandma's house, and just about every day during those summers, it'd be me, my sister, and 2 of my cousins hanging out watching Nick Gas and Life Size and playing games like Work and Clown. Oh wait, that's just what I do now. Sometimes my parents let me bring video games to Grandma's house, and during most of those days, we'd spend a good chunk of time playing Mario Party, with 2 being our personal favorite. We'd usually play the minigames only, but sometimes we'd try to fit a game board in, and for some reason they always wanted to play on Mystery Land, which is fundamentally one of the worst boards, but I was just glad I could play a game with them at all, so I'd let them have their board. There's probably 20 games we played that aren't included in this list because everyone would get tired by turn 15, and I didn't realize there was an option in the settings to autosave every turn until everyone had grown up and stopped going to Grandma's. Hang on, does anyone else's Nintendo 64 reset because the vent underneath overheats? I don't think I'll be needing that. And I'm sure I could do without this. One of my favorite things about the boards of Mario Party 2 was that the characters wear costumes matching the board's theme. So in Western Land, everyone's looking all rootin' and tootin', and in Pirate Land, everyone's dressed to shiver ye timbers. I always played as Yoshi, and man was I obsessed with the big-nosed dino when I was a kid. He was green, he was in all the games I was playing, and at the time, I got a Yoshi toy in a kid's meal. It was like the universe was directing me into the warm, scaly embrace of the Yosh. And the youthfully innocent and cringy reason I mention this all is because I had a blue and white striped shirt like the one Yoshi wears in Pirate Land that instantly became my favorite shirt, and I really wanted to share that for some reason. But back to the boards, Mario Party 2 features 6, which is about average for most games in the series. I personally liked Spaceland, and as you can see, my cousins and sister never wanted to finish this map. I'll admit the gimmicks on this board are kinda lame, like this number in the center that counts down every time someone passes it, and once it hits 0, Bowser shoots a laser that zaps your coins if you're in its path. And the happening spaces activate these cars that move you backwards unless you pay space cops to presumably show them some brutality off screen. And as for the rest of the boards, there's Mystery Land, which has 4 separated quadrants, and landing on a happening space teleports you clockwise, and man is it frustrating trying to reach some of these stars because of the luck involved. You can also put curses on your opponents that makes them roll a 1, 2, or 3 on their next turn, or shrink their dominant arm by 8%. There's also advanced bob-ombs that can transfer you between quadrants 1 and 3, and sometimes this godless wasteland full of red spaces. And with all the luck involved on this board, I really don't think it's as bad as people say it is. Or I'm just incredibly biased because, I mean, look at this. Western Land takes place in a small town, which I would love to run around in if it were a Mario level. There's a lot of branching paths, but when you get down to it, this board is one big circle. The gimmick is this train that you can ride from one station to another, and if it runs over anyone, they go back to the start. There's also this milk bar where you can get the fellows drunk on milk and a hootenanny, which is squad goals if you ask me. Pirate Land is even more of a circle than Western Land, but has more opportunities to jump around from one section to another with swamps that act as tolls, and there are docks where skipping ahead or backwards is one shark right away. And despite the Yoshi costume, I hesitate to play this map because the bridges in the center are covered in happening spaces that send you back to the start, and I've had rounds where I get japed to the bridge every time I reach it. Horror Land is pretty chaotic. There's a day and night gimmick where toll womps on the map freeze at night, and there's also 5 different boo spaces that can only be used at night too. They put 2 of these spaces right next to each other, so you can get absolutely rinsed if somebody hates you. I'm looking at you, Donkey Kong. There's also this Mr. I that you can pay to bypass all the boos if that's your style. And hidden behind a secret path, and limited of course by the day-night system, is Big Boo, who steals from everyone instead of forcing players to pick one target. So it's technically possible to steal stars from everyone if you have 150 coins, but with all the boo spaces available, it's nearly impossible to accomplish. Bowser Land might be chaotic too, but I've had pretty tame experiences on this board. Every 5 turns there's a parade that goes around the map, and if it runs into you, you'll lose all your coins and go back to the start. At most intersections, you can pay to decide which direction the parade goes, and I imagine this can get brutal with human players looking for blood. There's also warp pipes scattered around the map that'll teleport you, and the banks give money away, but take yours if you land on the space, so there's a lot of ways to get sucker punched here. Some of the other elements on each board were the chance time, item, battle, and bank spaces. The latter 3 were introduced in Mario Party 2. Chance time mixes things up, and by mix things up I mean screw up my one opportunity to beat Donkey Kong in Horror Land. Item spaces give you a minigame to earn an item. This is also the first Mario Party to feature items, like mushrooms that give extra dice, keys that open extra paths on the board. Luigi, what are you doing? The best item is the magic lamp that instantly brings you a dumpy hubby, who additionally brings you to the star. The battle space forces players to pull in coins to play a special minigame. I'll talk more about these when I get to the minigames. And the bank space takes 5 coins away every time you pass it, but if anyone lands on that space, they'll get the money that was put in. There's one more space, which is Koopa Kid's space, who also takes 5 coins away, and this space moves to where the last star was, which can add some level of strategy in deciding whether or not to race somebody to the star. Additionally, if a Bowser Bomb item comes into play, Koopa Kid transforms into Bowser, in costume, and runs around the map for a bit, taking all the coins from his prey. Oh, and there's also the Bowser space, which usually results in the revolution, or losing 10 coins. I always liked it when he spun 100 free stars, or 10,000 coins, because of Bowser's reaction. And the last thing about the boards, and something I missed from Mario Party 2, is how the winner is announced. The newer games think it's more suspenseful to slowly reveal how everybody placed, but Mario Party 2 says, forget that, here's the winner, and here's them kicking Bowser's ass. The reward is more than just pride, it's a cutscene just for you, and it's something I wish would come back. And they play into the amusement park theme since I assume these are all skits, but how do you explain this? I said there were a ton of rounds with my cousins we didn't finish, but ironically enough, Mario Party 2 is one of the quicker entries to do a 20-turn game because there aren't a ton of events and animations to sit through. Most of our rounds that were lost in time actually occurred because one of our controllers would start moving on its own, and as far as we knew, the only fix was to unplug and replug the controller. But the console is so sensitive that the lightest touch would freeze the game. If only we knew that pressing left, right, and start would recalibrate the controller, and, you know, saving between turns. That's one of the reasons why we'd play minigames more instead, even though minigames are pretty much why people play Mario Party at all. I already talked more than enough about platform peril, but Mario Party 2 has a really strong collection of minigames, and even the bad ones give me nostalgia. About 1/3 of the minigames are copied from Mario Party 1, which is surprising how this never tanked 2's reception. But to be fair, the minigames copied over have a fresh coat of paint, and many have been improved, like Handcar Havoc, which made it so you can't fall off the track this time, and Shy Guy Says added a timer which helps identify fake-outs. I always like the aesthetic of minigame land and how the minigames are represented by apples on trees, and the piranha plant that would run around them chasing a butterfly added a level of charm I didn't know I needed. When you start the game, there's only 3 trees available, featuring 4-player, 1 vs 3, and 2 vs 2 minigames. The battle minigames were the favorites for us kids, and not being able to play any of them freely sucked at a level you couldn't imagine. Minigames like Facelift, Crazy Cutters, Raking 'em In, and Day at the Races were so fun to play during the rare opportunities they'd appear on a game board, and sometimes we'd boot up the minigame stadium just because it had 2 relatively easy battle spaces to land on. If you want to unlock the battle minigame tree, as well as one for item minigames, you'd have to complete the minigame coaster on hard, which is one of the toughest challenges to expect a 6-year-old to complete. I couldn't even beat the first room on easy, and to do it on hard plus 7 other rooms would be impossible, especially room 7, which requires an ungodly amount of determination, featuring life eaters like Honeycomb Havoc, Abandoned Ship, and Hot Rope Jump. And as you can see, I've done it. But it was years after my cousins stopped going to my grandma's house. Man, it sucks growing up sometimes. I did this for them, and we never got to enjoy the spoils together. At least I have my memories of all the minigames we play over and over again, so here's my thoughts on a bunch of them. Hexagon Heat is another absolute favorite of mine, and the physics in this version make it much more competitive. Jumping on your opponent's heads can launch you in a random direction, so there's a layer of strategy to try to position yourself under somebody, and ground pounds, or hip drops as this game calls it, is a great risk versus reward attack. I'd probably hold Hexagon Heat tournaments today if I had the means to. Mecha Marathon, or Mecha Marathon as we called it, was our introduction to button mashing minigames, which are one of the best genres of minigames. Hot Rope Jump is one we'd play a bunch too. Sometimes we'd all play this one using our feet or sitting upside down to make it more challenging. Getting out Toad on the first try in the later rounds of Toad in the Box is what sex feels like. I think we'd always go to this one for the dopamine rush. Skateboard Scamper is always a blast, and the Haunted House was such an odd choice that I'm glad was used. I love Roll Call, but we probably had more fun trying to count to 99 and back as fast as possible. Slot Car Derby and Shy Guy Says have become new favorites of mine after finally understanding how to play them and having quicker reflexes. Sneak and Snore isn't a favorite, but its flick controls were super frustrating to use, which resulted in so many draws. Most of the 2 vs 2 minigames were so hard to get good at when we were younger. I find it hard to believe we sucked at Sky Pilots and Bobsled Run, but we were. The car controls featured in Magnet Carta feel so uniquely weird despite being tank controls. My personal favorite 2v2ers are Cake Factory and Speed Hockey. Cake Factory is just timing, but man was it frustratingly good when things sped up. And I love Speed Hockey because I love foosball, despite being terrible at it. The 1 vs 3 minigames are my least favorite collection in this game. I think these are more enjoyable in multiplayer, like Look Away and Lights Out get more exciting when you can feel the tension on the couch. But then there's games like Archer Rival, which is so dependent on CPU RNG, and Crane Game, which drags on and sucks worse if one person playing is a faster button masher than everyone else. But I do have a soft spot for Shock Drop and Roll, which is another minigame like Platform Peril that I was determined to last 30 seconds on. I glazed over the battle minigames earlier, but Facelift is probably my second favorite minigame in the entire series after Platform Peril. It's so fun pulling the characters' faces, and I feel like the Nintendo 64 graphics are what really sell this minigame. Crazy Cutters is the tracing game, which is another one of my favorite genres of minigames. I don't know if it was incompetence or what, but too often at least one of us kids would somehow lose instantly by running back to the start or something. I honestly couldn't tell you what causes this to happen. Raking 'em In is probably the worst feeling timing minigame ever, and I can't stop playing it. Bumper Balloon Cars is another one I've started to enjoy recently, even though it uses the tank control cars, and Day at the Races was satisfying to watch despite being a luck game, and can anyone agree with me that Boo wins this game the most while Thwomp almost never wins or even gets second place? And then there's the item and duel minigames, which are board specific. I'm never dying to play any of these since they're pretty simple, like some duels are be the closest to count 2 seconds, or have a quicker reaction speed than your opponent, and item minigames feel pointless in free play, but these games may determine which boards you want to play, like the oh-so-coveted Mystery Land has great duel and item minigames, while Bowser Land has RPS and Slot Machine. So that's all I've got for the minigames of Mario Party 2. I could probably tell you a story or memory about every minigame in this collection, like the time I won Bowser's Big Blast by doing nothing, or that I drew bombs away for one of the pages in this weird chicken noodle soup and rice poetry book my kindergarten class made, and I put 2 devils on it for some reason. I don't even know if I still have that hidden in storage somewhere, just take my word for it. But I want to end this video saying that you don't know what you have until it's gone, and that moments, even years of your life you think will last forever, will end. So make the best out of them and create memories to cherish in the future. When I was 6, I wasn't thinking about how many years I'd get to spend seeing my cousins playing Mario Party. I just knew I'd see them every summer. And when a summer came around and my cousins weren't showing up to Grandma's house, I'd still pack 4 controllers every day because part of me had hope that I'd get one more chance to play some Mario Party with them. I did that for years. That's how long it took me to understand that the good times were over and that it was time to grow up. And Mario Party 2 is one of the mementos I have to remember those days I spent with them. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to leave a like to help the channel grow and subscribe to get updates on my uploads as soon as they happen. But until then, I will see you all next time.